What famous 1970s arcade classic went from having no human characters to a reboot with a shower scene? How many franchises did Rare ruin by bringing them from the N64 to the Xbox? Here are 15 reboots and spin-offs that tried to breathe new life into their franchises but ended up hurting them worse. I'm Danger Dolan, and today I will be your narrator.
Number 15.
Sonic 06 was to be the chosen one. After Sonic the Hedgehog series got muddled with the failure of the Dreamcast, it went several years without a mainline adventure type game. Sonic Team was so proud of rebooting the franchise that they simply named their new game Sonic the Hedgehog. But then they rushed it, put out an infamously buggy mess with horrible load times. Good job.
Number 14.
Space Raiders. Nobody asked for this, and yet it happened. Somebody actually thought to reboot Space Invaders, like the 1978 original Space Invaders. This is a game about a spaceship shooting other spaceships, turned into a game about some random characters shooting aliens in a narrow alleyway. They even tried to give it a story, although that may have just been an excuse to give the large-breasted fashion photographer a shower scene.
Number 13.
SimCity was among the gold standards in so-called god games for a long time. You'd build your city, collect taxes, save your game, and destroy it with monster attacks. It was fun, felt good. And then EA took hold of the franchise and decided that everyone should have a much smaller city than before. Also, they should never be able to play because the game requires an online connection and the servers are always down.
Number 12.
Bomberman Act Zero. So Bomberman's dumb little rectangular head and straight line eyes and unexplained antenna make for a cute character design that lots of people know and love. This, on the other hand, is something out of a B-tier sci-fi movie that nobody knows or cares about. They tried to give the mature audience treatment to the beloved franchise and ended up with a game that looks as bland as it plays.
Number 11.
CONKER Live and Reloaded. CONKER's Bad Fur Day is a rarity, a game for a Nintendo console with heavy drinking, profanity, and other explicit and offensive content. While flawed in many areas, CONKER had a raunchy adult charm like nothing else at the time, but when the game was ported to Xbox, it ended up heavily censored. That's right, the Nintendo game, too explicit for the Xbox.
Number 10.
BIONIC Commando wasn't even really a series, it was just one really good, really difficult game that Capcom made in 1987. The reboot nobody asked for came in 2009 and recast the Commando, Nathan Spencer, as a gritty, mud-covered, generic action hero. But gameplay-wise, anything people wanted from this game, they'd already gotten out of 2008 BIONIC Commando Rearmed. The transition to 3D went over very poorly. Likely the best thing to come out of this game is creating the character model for Spencer, who became a quite popular character in Marvel vs. Capcom.
Number 9.
The original Alone in the Dark has the distinction of being considered the first ever 3D survival horror game. Its reboot, 2008, has almost nothing at all to do with the original game, and just sort of uses the name to be a boring survival horror game that is basically about setting everything on fire. But at least it's better than Alone in the Dark Illumination, which came out in 2015 and sports a Metacritic score of 18 out of 100.
Number 8.
Final Fight Streetwise. So the original Final Fight is a classic arcade beat 'em up. They gave us Mick Haggart, the pro wrestler turned mayor, that defeated crime in his city by giving it a spinning pile driver. And to its credit, Streetwise also features Haggart, but he's a non-playable character in story mode. But really the problem with Streetwise is it's just awful to play. They actually tried to translate the 2D fighting mechanics to 3D, but the sloppy camera controls and loose movement are just frustrating.
Number 7.
Shadowrun is a beloved tabletop RPG that's been around for decades, and the Super Nintendo version of the game was way ahead of its time. So when a new version was announced in 2007, there was understandably some excitement. At least there was, until the beloved tabletop RPG was turned into a dime a dozen first-person shooter. The multiplayer was popular for a while, but the game was such a failure that they couldn't even keep the servers up for very long.
Number 6.
BANJO KAZOOIE Nuts and Bolts. Rare knew they were taking a chance when they took the collectathon mechanics of the original game and shoehorned them into this where you build and race vehicles. It's not like it's a terrible game, but it's far from what series fans wanted from the next game in the series. But then again, Yooka-Laylee wasn't especially well received either, so maybe series fans don't know what the fuck they want, like Star Wars fans.
Number 5.
Perfect Dark Zero. This is the third game on the list that was a rare title for the 64 and ended up flopping for Microsoft. Rare's transition to working under Microsoft wasn't exactly a smooth one, and Perfect Dark Zero is a perfect example of that. The original is a classic for the 64, and it should have been a slam dunk transitioning to a console known for first-person shooters with 2 joysticks for aiming. While it was reviewed relatively well at the time and sold over 1 million copies, the fact is it came out in 2005, and Perfect Dark has been pretty much dormant ever since.
Number 4.
TUROK was a long-running series of games that were basically about being a badass space marine shooting dinosaurs, and somehow they managed to screw that up with its 2008 reboot. Came out during the time that developers thought every game needed to have stealth elements, but dodgy AI made that a clunky endeavor. TUROK came out in 2008 and actually sold over 1 million copies, but the developer that made it was shut down, and the series hasn't been heard from since.
Number 3.
Devil May Cry. It's another one of those games that isn't really a bad game, it's just a bad reboot. Devil May Cry 4 was an excellent game, but then a huge contingent of the people who worked on that game left Capcom. Rather than try and make a Devil May Cry 5 with a new team, they rebooted the series with a teenage Dante sporting a new look. DMC released in early 2013, and aside from cameo appearances for Dante, nothing has been announced for the series since.
Not in a million years.
Number 2.
In fairness, Sonic Boom is more of a spin-off than a reboot. It's a side project made to tie in with a cartoon series by the same name, but the drastic redesigns of the characters and its high-profile release on the Wii U made it feel like a reboot. Good thing it wasn't a true reboot, because it was as much a buggy, busted disaster as Sonic 06. The game featured unfinished textures, objects no collision, a game-breaking bug that allowed Knuckles to jump indefinitely, which made over half the game completely skippable.
Number 1.
Technically, Duke Nukem Forever was intended to be a sequel, not a reboot, but it took so long to come out, it may as well have been. The best thing about Duke Nukem Forever getting released is that it allowed us to finally stop talking about Duke Nukem Forever. The game has been in development hell for 15 years and had earned an almost legendary status as the wait continued. And finally, Gearbox and 2K Games got a hold of the project and finished fighting out a mediocre game that put Duke Nukem back on the map and then immediately removed him from it for good. Dolan is now a video game. Play it as Dolan, Melissa, and the rest of the PD crew collecting shinies to unlock skins and power-ups. Download from the Android or iOS App Store and start racing today for free. That is it for this countdown. Have a good one!